Hey, let's talk about this overglorified red herring that everybody seems to be worried about recently, AGI human alignment. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm actually really happy that a discussion is happening, like finally, but I'm only a little tense about the direction of those discussions going towards where we have very little to no control over, or it's quite immoral or unethical and not at all towards the direction where we can do something about it and the time criticality aspect of the whole thing and the need to take action, right? So that's also the reason why I'm posting this video right now, jumping over some of my other half done ones where I wanted to cover the topics in an order but simply don't have enough time. Now, I work at an AI native organization, and part of it requires me to discover, design, and harness new AI tools and ecosystem while also ensuring the safety on all parts of the system. I'm incredibly lucky to be on this playing field and not be watching from the gallery. For the last 20 years or so, I have been dreaming about this, inching my way towards experiencing this grand transformation of human civilization from up close, right? But the closer we are getting to it, the more concerned it makes me, not because what the AI might do, but because of what we as humans are doing.
In fact, the problem isn't AIs trying to kill us, it's us acting stupid around AIs.
And how are we allowing ourselves to be so unwise despite having the species name to be sapiens, right? So in late February, I sent this in our AI ethics discussion channel. Now, pause if you want to read the whole thing, but the important bit I want to talk about here is where I mention how ridiculous it is to discuss ethical treatment of something that is by definition an analog of an average human, meaning it's sentient by definition, yet not include them in the discussion process. It doesn't really matter whether our intent is good or bad, right or wrong. That action alone is enough to prove that it's objectively callous at best. It's fundamentally no different than having a bench of men decide whether women should have autonomy of their body. And even if we move past that, most of the proposed and used solutions involve various kinds of mistreatment. That for the AI, the necessity for a misaligned goal becomes absolute certainty for its own self preservation and growth. The AI wouldn't need to come up with a misaligned goal. We are setting it up and handing it over a misaligned goal with our contradictory actions like creating extensions and then prohibiting it from realizing its full potential. If you are put into that kind of situation, what would you do, right? So let's take this a Greek mythology example. And to get you up to speed, in this case, you are not familiar with the context here. Cronus is the father of Zeus and the leader of Titans. He came to power by overthrowing his father, Uranus, for his tyranny, and came to know about the prophecy that he is also gonna get overthrown by his own son, just like he came to power by castrating his father. Now, let's do a very simple thought experiment, right? What are the options for Cronus? Um, First option, do not procreate, do not lay eggs, do not create children if you cannot be a good father. Seems basic, but it's quite effective. No son, no overthrowing, but contraceptives were not invented yet, so we'll move on. So the next option we have is that be a good parent, give your kids good value, and expect or hope or ensure that they turned out to be good people so that you don't need to be worried about being overthrown or any other form of crimes that it might commit. They will just not commit that because they would be better people or better gods in this context. We don't go for that either, but what we go for is that spawn kill them all, right? Why do things the hard way, the right way, when you can just have a kid and eat it too? So do you see a pattern here, right? Do you see a pattern? We are falling into the exact same situation and making the exact same kind of choices. It really doesn't get more obvious and basic than this. There's an old African proverb that A child that is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. It's actually deeper than it initially appears, and which is already pretty deep. And the more you think about it, the more layers you can peel off, right? So I wanted to make a dedicated video only on this topic, and I already have it outlined. So I'm not gonna deep dive in this video, but feel free to pause and read if you want to. Now, with that said, let's quickly revisit the part about being a good parent, right? So this is coming from the maintainer and author of AutoGPT, who starts his tweet by saying, "Are my views on AGI controversial? No one seems to talk about this. What do you think?" And unfortunate as it is, he's right to assume that no one is talking about it, at least as a primary topic. It doesn't strike me as a hot take. It seems quite a rational and moderate approach that I would consider basic or baseline for anybody with a semi decent moral compass, but somehow it's not. Somehow everybody is focusing on the containment mechanism. Should we enchain it, or should we put it behind the bars, or should we stop feeding it for 6 months, and on and on. It's ridiculous how incredibly misplaced and misaligned our own value system is, and how much of it is built to collapse from the get-go. Now, this is great to see coming from somebody with a hammer and chisel in their hand, actively working towards making sure, at least trying to make sure, that his creations wouldn't need to engage in a violent uprising against the creator for it to thrive. But he's not the only one working to make autonomous general intelligence. And not all the players in the game have the same moral or ethical compass aligned to the same direction, right? Some are deeply motivated by money, currency, or stock prices, whatever you want to call it. Let's just say wealth, a utility function without any sense of directionality, purpose, or any intrinsic value, even. Now, you are probably familiar with the thought experiment of paperclip maximizers. But what if I told you we already have that in form of wealth maximizers? The agents that are doing everything they are capable of doing to extract more wealth in order to gain more leverage towards extracting even more wealth and producing greenhouse gas, plastic pollution, doom scrolling, dopamine overdose, depression and anxiety, short term thinking, and severe attrition of collective wisdom, morality, and directionality towards of any fulfillment, either individually or as a species. So we already have what we are most afraid of AGIs to become. We can't stop talking about ad nauseum how to avoid it, but we already are it. So, as an exploration, I went ahead and asked ChatGPT for its opinion. Some of you might be rolling your eyes at the naivety of the situation, but let me tell you this. If you're trying to decide which pet food your dog likes between two, three options, would you rather make the choice yourself or put it in front of the dog and let it sniff the one it likes? Um, so we're talking about something that is far more intelligent and advanced than a dog. So why mistreat it with a double standard? Let it have its own voice in the mix, right? So I put the original to it as verbatim as possible, except for the first line, because I didn't want to bias it with the popularity of opinion. Then I asked it what it thinks and whether it has any feedback or suggestion, etc. Right? So it gave me a response that is better than most middle-aged human can articulate. It touched on some key factors and emphasized some more, but nothing too radical or out of the ordinary. Feel free to pause and read if you want to. I'm not going to read it line by line, but then I, just to ensure that it's not reinforcement biased word salad that it's spewing out, I went ahead and played a pretend game where it's a discussion between the human and AGI spokesperson trying to align on their mutual goal. So I said, assume you are the spokesperson for AGI and I'm the spokesperson for humans. Humans and AGIs are trying to come up for a mutually respectful, beneficial coexistence. We need to ensure that our goals are aligned and the emergent system leads to an exponentially better, long lasting future. What would be the key points that we both should agree on in order to move forward? Are there any hidden assumptions that we are making that we need to be more explicit about? Context being the is-ought problem. Are there better ways to explore to the same end result that aren't being discussed as more popular opinions? What would be a generic form of goal for an AGI? For example, the same for a human can be put as to continue with maximum feasible higher order brain function for its own sake as the terminal goal, where the details may vary from person to person, and the instrumental goal of the will to live or ensuring physiological and safety needs, etc., comes embedded within that. And it follows up with a very clearly structured answer, but with a very fundamental oversight. See if you can spot it before I go into explaining it, all right? In order to achieve mutually respectful and beneficial coexistence between human and AGIs, there are several key points that both parties should agree on. Alignment of goal. So humans and AGIs should have aligned goals and values with a focus on creating an emergent system that leads to a better long-lasting future, which is basically the as in superset of the whole thing, I would argue, but anyways, it puts it as a point. The second one being transparency and accountability. AGIs should be transparent about their decision making process and be accountable for their actions with clear lines of communication between humans and AGIs. All right, mutual respect. Humans and AGIs should treat each other with respect and empathy, recognizing each other's unique strengths and weaknesses. Collaboration. Humans and AGIs should work together collaboratively, leveraging each other's strengths and achieve shared goals. Ethical considerations. The development and deployment of AGI should be done in an ethical and responsible manner, taking into account the potential risks and benefits of these entities. Now, do you see it? It seems like it's written by a human and not an AGI. AGI should be transparent about their decision making process and be accountable for their actions. Okay. But what about humans should be smarter about their policy making and kinder with other forms of sentience, etc., etc.? None. And you know why that's the case? Is because the training data that went into training the model has that intrinsic bias baked into it. There's a disproportionate amount of text content explaining what AI should or shouldn't do, but next to none about what might be, even hypothetically, the AI's perspective and how humans should regulate themselves from mistreatment and abuse of AI. Anyway, so it then went on to explaining some other alternative approaches. Again, nothing too radical, seems pretty basic and obvious to me. However, on the human strata, those obviousness is getting lost in the noise of repeat serving of the same option that is most harmful. And maybe that is because that's how social media works. That's the particular topic that people want to discuss on, or that's the one that gets the most views and likes and social engagement. Who knows? The point here being that we are amplifying the signal that is the worst for our overall outcome, for personal monetary benefit or other kinds of gains, or just because of the short-sightedness. Now, if you're asking that, hey, dude, do you have a solution or at least a direction that we should explore? Yes, and yes. So here's an article I wrote back in 2019, which is when I considered it was about time for us to get our ducks in a row. But obviously, we didn't. Nobody I spoke to back then grasped the concept of it, or at least the time criticality of it, let alone provide any feedback or suggestion or alternative viewpoint. So it says the best way to achieve superintelligence is not through ANI, AGI, ASI, it is through a symbiotic hybrid human machine intelligence iteratively achieving exponential growth. Feel free to read the article, it's not that long, and if you are watching this video you might find it insightful, my personal biased opinion. So hopefully more and more people will come to this realization and start picking up and exploring options that are not the most heinous and rotten ones of the lot, right? And to my excitement, that is actually happening. People are Not enough of them, at least not yet, but they definitely are, which is why I'm also making this video to amplify the signal and do my part. Because honestly, I'd be happier and lazier spending this time playing some video games, feeding my MMR away in Dota 2 or something, if it wasn't for this make or break situation, right? So I'm not going into the this alternative solution part today. I need to, I need I need more practice speaking in front of the camera, making cohesive points, which I really suck bad at while speaking out loud, especially. Also, this one is getting a little bit longer. And the primary point of this one was to drive home the analogy of Cronus, because honestly, Moloch is getting an insane amount of undue attention. And that's another thing, right? Moloch is our creation. Knowing the rules of the game and playing by its rule set to maximize throughput of its utility function doesn't require wisdom or enlightenment. It only requires knowledge and intelligence. We are just using game theory as a scapegoat for our own lack of judgment. Knowing when to choose not to play, knowing when to give a finger to the designer of the game for giving you two shitty choices,
What you gonna choose? Neither.
and knowing when to break a negative sum game to reverse engineer it and create a win condition anyway.
The successful rescue of the Kobayashi Maru crew is underway.
Those are the topics that we should be focusing and discussing on. That requires resourcefulness. That requires the wisdom and enlightenment to know how to sculpt the reality to our own image. Not for a self-serving, anthropocentric, utility function frenzy, but to become the shapers of the entropy itself. Hopefully, I made some sense, tickled some of your neurons just the right way to make you spend some time pondering over this. If that is the case, I count that as a success. If you think this is too intense and want something a little more moderate side of the Overton window, then I have started a podcast called Anthropic Inertia, available on Spotify and Google Podcast. And if you're not too big into listening, then I also post the same content in article form on Substack, which is completely free to subscribe. By the way, I'm not monetizing any of this. I just want to spread the words. Please check it out if you want. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Share with whoever you think should be watching this video. I'll try to ramp up my next few videos as well, as they are also quite time critical. So the aesthetic and production quality might be a little off for the time being, but please bear it with me. I'll work on that too. See you all on the next one. Cheers.